Workers' welfare, salary, protection in workplaces are some of the cries of the average Nigerian worker. And for the labor union, how much have they helped in this regard? On Media Review segment today, we shall be taking a look at the coverage of labor issues in Nigeria. And to do justice to this is an ace broadcaster, a veteran, one who has headed the labor desk in the NTA for the past few years. He is one many of us look up to and, of course, respect. May I introduce my guest, Cyril Stober. Uncle Cyril, you're welcome.
Thank you. I'm just Cyril.
I like the way you call your name. My name is Cyril Stober. All right. For many years, you've headed and covered the labor desk while in the NTA. Tell us, what's the difference in the coverage of labor issues then and now? Well,
easily there should be a great difference. Well, I left the labor desk. It's some time now. It's a while ago since I left the labor desk. But I recall that back then, when we had to establish a proper labor desk, we didn't have the advantage that most reporters of labor issues have now. They have access to a great deal of information. But so easily what I can tell you is it ought to be a lot better than it is now.
And do you think it is?
Well, you see, these days I tend to see that coverage of labor-related matters has gradually gone down the same trap that we're not looking at. And it goes straight to the point of industrial actions, the strikes. And this is at the detriment of so many issues that should be highlighted. Agreed, they talk about unemployment, but even then you still have underemployment, which is not spoken about much. You have so many unfair labor practices going on. Safety in workplaces, these are issues people don't pay attention to. The rights of workers, even the right to unionize, which has been taken away, especially in most private organs. And we're not highlighting these enough. I think it shouldn't be.
Now, how true is it that we only hear of labor issues whenever there's a protest, strike coming up?
I'll tell you easily, if you watch any news programming or pick up the newspapers, some of them have this small column where they talk about labor issues, most especially either the center spread, the center pages. On the electronic media, you hardly ever take those issues into account.
During the time when you covered labor, has it always been strike the easiest way to address issues?
Well, it's not usually the easiest way to address issues. I can tell you easily that for most workers, they'd rather stay on their jobs and put in their best and increase their productivity. But you see, when they're left with no other option than to flex muscles, as we say, then and it so happens that if you take a look at current issues on the labor front that are leading to industrial actions in most cases, they're not that different from the issues that have always been talked about in the past. Salary, the issue of a living wage, the issue of good working conditions, these things come always. So what it means is that resolving them, and so they are thrown up all the time. But you see, resolving them does not necessarily end at the negotiation table. Sometimes the media has to highlight some things that are likely to create industrial unrest. And I don't think that we have done much on that.
These are the areas of underemployment and some other areas. What are other areas?
Take casualization, for instance.
Okay.
We still have casualization a lot. And you see, the reportage on this is pretty low. So it makes it seem as if, well, it's at the lowest, but it really isn't. Now, you have organizations, particularly in the private sector, that engage in all kinds of unfair practices. Now, they do this because of the unemployment situation, and they know they can get away with it. They employ people, and they don't, provide the proper conditions of service because they know they can hire and fire at the drop of a hat. And these things go unreported because many people acquiesce. They just keep quiet. You see, it takes a courageous person who has been out of employment and then complain about the services. And a lot of employers, particularly in the private sector, take advantage of this.
Okay, you must have observed their practice in international climes. How much different? What do you think we can learn, borrow from this?
A lot of things. You see, there are regulators as well. Let's take this, the matter of safety in the workplace. I'm not trying to indict anyone, but if you consider your work environment and realize that there are certain minimum requirements, and ask yourself, now this is applicable to so many places of work, ask yourself, have those minimum standards been met? Now, if they have not been met, you also ask yourself, how well has the inspectorate division done in carrying out inspections and taking a look at some of these workplaces and recommending what to do? You find out that nothing happens. Nobody takes it seriously. I think the whole matter just ends as, well, if you can pay me my salary, that's all. But you see, again, we can't blame anyone because the issue of salary has now overtaken just about everything.
If, for instance, a worker is being owed like 3 months, 6 months, can the worker walk up to the union, and can the union protect such worker?
Well, the thing is, the unions are supposed to protect the interest of the workers all the time, and that's why you pay your check of dues. Your unions should protect you. Some unions have done better at protecting their members than others. Other unions, I'm sure you know of a number of those unions that they're lagging behind. I don't want to call their names, but you find that happen a lot. Look, I'll just tell you, you find those unions mostly in the media. And while they champion the cause of other workers, sometimes the tendency is that they forget to champion their own cause as well.
Physician, heal thyself.
Right.
Okay. During the period where you cover the desk, headed the desk, what is or what are some of the major challenges you faced?
Now, it's a specialized field, and therefore you need to know just about everything there is to know about it. And luckily, at the time we started doing this, we had very experienced people. Now, one of the advantages I had was that I was in the labor union myself, having served in different capacities as a young journalist. I had, been in the labor movement myself. I had been secretary of the Union of Journalists in my state at one time. I had even moved up to the level of being in the Nigeria Labour Congress. So that background I had, having been in the unions myself, helped me to understand and appreciate the issues when it came to reporting about labor matters. And so it helps if you, I'm not saying that you have to be a unionist to know what's going on, but what I'm saying is you have to know your bit. In short, you have to know everything about it, and it doesn't stop at that point.
Okay, just before I let you go, many people have said that the organized labor has been politicized. Do you, and some others also think journalists corresponding covering this bit have also been biased? Do you agree, very briefly?
I am not one who agrees with generalizing in that manner. Yes, in every part, in every aspect of human endeavor, you do have those who are not doing what they should do. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think what we're facing is what's going around in society, that there's so much suspicion. Now, if I agree with you, see, a lot of people tend to think that for me to do a good job about reporting, it's either I knock two heads, the employer and the employee. And if the employee, who is in a labor union, does not openly come out to flex muscles and throw punches, then he's seen as acquiescing and is seen as having been bought over. So I don't subscribe to that. I like to take specific examples. There are times when reporters have compromised themselves, and that we condemn every time we find it. But there are also times when I've told the truth the way it is.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess the point's taken. Thank you very much, Mr. Cyril Stober. All right, I've been talking with newscaster, veteran broadcaster Cyril Stober, and we've been addressing labor issues. He's headed the labor desk in the NTA for a couple of years before he left service. The rest of Insight continues in a moment.
Well, that's a wrap on Insight today. It's been labor affairs, workers' interests. Well, I believe you enjoyed it. Cecil?
Yeah, it was really nice getting to have the chat with Cyril Stober, an ace broadcaster, a veteran in his own space. So, and we talked so much about it. I never knew he was also a labor man one time. And also you had the big guys with you on set.
Well.
Anyhow, thank you very much for being there to completing this beautiful picture. Let's do this again next week.
Well, it's all about towards building a greater Nigeria. You, the worker, you have a role, and the government have a role. Together, we can build a greater Nigeria. Thanks for always being our guest on Insight. On behalf of all of us, as usual, bye-bye.